Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show, KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. We have with us Jonathon Moseley. He's a board member of the Northern Virginia Tea Party, executive director of American Border Control, criminal defense attorney in Virginia. Does a lot of work for a number of good litigation causes. Worked as the treasurer for Kristen O'Donnell in her contest for the U.S. Senate from Delaware. Very much active. He's been on this show before. I'm not going to exhaust your bio all that much more, Jonathon. Suffice to say, you're an active warrior on behalf of conservatives. I appreciate you coming on the show again.
A little bit of Don Quixote there, yes. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, in fact, maybe a little Don Quixote with respect to what's going on with Sheriff Joe. I mean, I know you aren't personally involved in that, or maybe you are. There was an article by Bob Unruh on WorldNet Daily that talked a little bit about a motion seeking to remove Arpaio's judge. Just to give our audience a little background, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, a friend of mine, he's under the gun for a contempt charge from a federal judge in Maricopa County, Arizona. Sheriff Joe, of course, been outspoken on a number of issues. A lot of people see this as a political vendetta. Jonathon, maybe you can give us a little bit more background and then what your involvement is in this and whether or not you think there's any chance this judge can get removed from the contempt proceeding against Sheriff Joe.
Well, of course, Sheriff Arpaio and the county in Arizona have their own attorney, so they're the lead there. But we got fairly directly involved by another person who's gotten caught up in this controversy I'm about to explain. And so we actually moved to intervene and moved to disqualify Judge G. Murray Snow and had to fight over technicalities. Finally, Arpaio's attorneys picked up the work that we had done with Professor Ronald Rotunda, and they have also filed a motion to disqualify, and they don't have the obstacles of being in the case of technicalities. So that will go forward. Very strange situation. It only came to light during an evidentiary hearing in April, the end of April, that Judge Snow's wife told a family friend, the mother, and husband and son in a restaurant that Judge Snow hates Arpaio and will do anything to get him out of office. The Karen Grissom, Dale Grissom and Scott Grissom don't know the sheriff, are not particularly active. They weren't really following the case that much, but they did know the judge's wife from childhood, and eventually got around to being disturbed enough by it to tell Arpaio over, I hate to give advertisement for Facebook, but Facebook message, and told him about this, and he handed it over to his attorney. His attorney, Tim Casey, then hired an investigator to go interview the Grissoms and find out what happened, what all this is about, to assess their credibility. Well, fast forward a couple years, and they're trying to get Sheriff Arpaio on contempt for not following Judge Snow's decision of 2013. They're trying to turn it into criminal contempt. Judge Snow asked to have the federal prosecutor in Arizona to attend, the U.S. attorney for the purpose of considering whether or not to try to put Joe Arpaio in jail, which I interpret politically as mainly just a way to cripple him in the upcoming elections for 2016 for re-election.
Right.
So anyway, the issue comes out that nobody knew it at the time until now, that Judge Snow's wife had announced that Judge Snow hates Arpaio and is doing anything to get out of him. The interviews confirmed it. I think it's a mistake that the attorney sat on it, didn't bring it out, and didn't use it to disqualify the judge. But everyone is trying to portray it now as if it isn't Judge Snow's, fault for obviously conveying to his wife bias about the case, that somehow it's Arpaio's fault for checking into a tip. And all of the Arizona media, and you were discussing the bar down there, they're all up in an uproar. How dare Judge Arpaio check into this, which is just bizarre. Now, legally, the case, I think, to disqualify Judge Snow is 100%. The problem is one of the many strange things about our legal system is when you ask a judge to be recused, you address it to the judge who is being recused. And that makes no sense, but that's the law. You ask the judge to recuse himself, and if he doesn't want to, he just makes up some excuse as to why he doesn't want to. But on the law, it's 100% clear. And if you help me keep an eye on the time, couple reasons why is this means that Judge Snow's wife is probably going to have to be a witness. The attorney, Tim Casey, resigned, saying, I now am going to have to be a witness, so I can't be the attorney too. Well, that goes double for the judge's wife. And it is very clear in the canon of conduct for United States judges that a judge cannot preside over a family member testifying in his own court, especially about him. And so even if one doubts whether or not the report of his wife is accurate about his bias, there are so many other problems with this situation. Another thing people might want to be aware of is, a lot of the reaction is that, Judge Arpaio engineered this. No, Arpaio's attorneys objected and said this is irrelevant. This should not be part of the proceedings. Strike this whole line of testimony. And the judge overruled them and insisted that he wants to take the current hearings about compliance with his prior orders and include anything about anyone investigating him and his wife and everything like that. So he's insisting on making his own family and himself part of the case.
It's interesting because this same judge you mentioned earlier had asked the U.S. attorney to be present at the hearing. It almost seems like there's a separation of powers issue here, too.
Yeah, I think I don't think I've heard of that, where it says, command performance. You will show up and take notes and bring a criminal case against this guy.
And that reflects even more, perhaps, malfeasance of the judge. Now, there was also an effort. There was something that went up to the appellate court, to the Ninth Circuit, on recusal before, right? Was it unrelated to this?
This was Larry Klayman, and I did a lot of the work on that. We asked for a petition of mandamus. We have a client, Dennis Montgomery, whose situation is very complicated, so I won't try to include it now, but is also being affected by this. And now, a mandamus is extremely difficult, always, to get, but it's an opening, it's a shot across the bow, let me put it that way. So it went up to the Ninth Circuit, to kind of start the process of bringing attention to this, and we didn't get the Ninth Circuit to grant a mandamus, which is an order, and there are a lot of technical reasons why you almost never get a petition for mandamus, but it puts a marker down in terms of, so from this point on, no one can say, we didn't know, we didn't think about it, so we don't think that's a loss. We think that's just the opening overture of the play.
And again, the work that you guys are doing is through the context of Freedom Watch, Larry Klayman's organization. Are you attorney of record on that, or is it just Larry?
Right. And I tried to, me too. I was actually the one trying to be admitted into the case because it was just more convenient for me. And then they were raising technicalities about whether or not we are adverse to Judge Arpaio and quibbling over my record and things like that, just as a way to avoid the question. The question is, it doesn't matter. The judge doesn't have to wait for a motion to realize he has a problem, which is part of the reason going to the Ninth Circuit. So,
you feel pretty confident? You feel confident enough on the law that if this judge persists in his insistence of inserting himself personally into this case, that's kind of a paraphrase what you're saying, that the Ninth Circuit will back you guys up?
Yeah, because then it will go up on a normal appeal where the rules are not quite as difficult. If he refuses to recuse himself, then it can be appealed under better rules to go up there. So I think he has to recuse. It's not like there's there are other judges in the world. There are retired judges. It's not. In fact, it's interesting. The previous judge on this case had to recuse herself because her twin sister, as I read, was the head of the National Council of La Raza in that region. Now, kind of she sat on the case for 2 years when her sister runs La Raza, which is, as you know, one of the most fervent immigrant rights, illegal immigrant pushing organizations you can find.
Yeah, Jonathan, we're going to have to wrap it up here. We're nearing the end of the hour, but, it doesn't surprise me at all. Back in my 2010 race, we had a federal judge weigh in, and his wife was an activist or working for Lisa Murkowski. It's just unbelievable how the rules don't seem to apply to many members of the federal judiciary, and it is leading to a loss of faith in the system. I appreciate your efforts, though, Jonathan, Freedom Watch's effort, Larry Klayman's efforts to bring accountability. Keep up the good work, and appreciate getting an update maybe from time to time from you on the case.
Thank you.
All right, stay with us. The Joe Miller Show. More after these messages.